Okay, let's do this. Hi, everyone. I am Kellie Thorn. Thank you all for being here today. I am a BNIC certified cognac educator. I'm also a WSET level 3 spirits educator, and I'm the beverage director for Chef Hugh Atchison. And today we are going to be covering quite a bit of ground regarding cognac, but it is a lot of information to try to get in an hour. So I'm going to guide you to this website here after we're done today, cognac.fr/EN for English. There is a wealth of information for you there, and we highly encourage you to go and explore it after this. Next slide, please. There are all of our social media and hashtags. Use them freely. Next slide, please. And okay, so I know you're all here to learn about cognac, but it's the exciting Cognac Connection competition that has actually brought us all here together today. So I'm going to turn it over to my amazing co-hosts who need no introduction to tell you a little more about it, Lynette Marrero and Ivy Mix.
Hi, everyone. Lynette and I are very excited for many reasons, one of which is to actually lay eyes on one another so long as I've gone in 10 years without seeing my work wife in person. And also to see Kellie, who is all of the things that she just said and more, a good friend to Lynette and I both, has done speed rack and is just an all-around good person and badass woman. So a little bit about what's going on here with the Cognac Connection. We partnered with the BNIC to celebrate the category that is cognac. Really trying to kind of break out of these kind of limitations sometimes that we find that people might think that cognac is just for your fall and winter menu. You know, cognac is just for this and cognac is just for that. Sorry, joy of Zoom, you can hear like my truck going by my apartment.
Ambient sounds.
Yeah. But what we really want to talk about today, on top of this education, is give you a little bit of information about what the Cognac Connection is and the opportunities available. So now through August 31st, we are doing this program. Part of the program is cocktail creation competition and part education, like where we are now. So the prize or the stipend at the end is we're going to reward 10 bartenders a $1,000 stipend, which is so amazing because, as we all know, there's a pandemic going on. People in our industry are not working as much as they were, if at all. So this is a really excellent opportunity to educate yourself and to also try to get a little bit of reward for your hard work in a time when you may not be having that much income coming in. So you can learn a lot about it at cognacconnection.com and also through our Instagram, which is @speed_rack. Lynette's doing a live this Wednesday on top of making a cocktail today. And yeah, there's just lots of fun stuff ahead, and we're utilizing the speed rack community to spread the word out, and please spread the word out further if you can. And my hope is that we will just see a bunch of cognac cocktails that kind of are a little bit outside the box. And I'm really excited about that.
Yes, so we actually also just extended the deadlines for all you bartenders out there who are sorry to panic you. We actually pushed it back a week, so you'll have through Labor Day. So knowing that this today will hopefully spark a bunch of wonderful ideas. And I'm gonna actually meet you now on Friday from the farm, because that's deal with farmer schedule. So we'll actually be visiting Fishkill Farms up here in the Hudson Valley, and talking with the farmer who's had it in his family for ages. And it's really great because when I think about when we talk to them, you know, it's generations of farmers, very much in a way like you'll see how generations build and make cognac. And so it'll be really exciting. You'll see one of my favorite places, and we'll have delicious tall drinks. But we'll move on to the next slide so y'all can get this amazing information from Kellie. All right, this is, just a quick flash. We wanted to make sure that you all had the correct kind of guidelines and directions, and we made sure things were a little bit more clear for your cocktails. So again, just cognac is the primary spirit in there. Obviously, you can have modifiers, but cognac needs to be the star. No more than 6 ingredients total. Please no more than 2 homemade ingredients because it gets really complex otherwise, and we really want people to make these as well and to share these recipes. They will get exposure as well. So we have, again, make sure that those homemade ingredients are nothing too crazy that we can deal with. And then you should be able to recreate them in any bar. We're hoping people want to create them at home as well and have a name and which cognac you use in it. So we're going to taste through some today, which hopefully I was really excited to try some of these new cognacs because some of them I hadn't been as familiar with, and now I'm really excited to mix with them. Next slide. Oh, wow, here's all the judging information for you. I forgot we put all of this in, but anyway, so this is for you all to know kind of just the breakdown of what we're doing. Obviously, your recipe will have 60 points. How it looks, that's going to be your picture you take. Don't worry, we have an imagination, so if you don't have the best lighting, we just want to see how you would style it, how it would go out to your guest. So don't worry about the quality of the photo as long as we can just see it, what's going on. And then obviously your originality and creativity will be 20 points, technique 5, and then the taste, that's going to be 30. And then the rest of those points are from these activations that we've been doing. So if you missed Ivy's IG Live, you can watch it. It's actually saved on a speed rack and at Cognac Connection. And you can go ahead and watch that and get your secret code. And then for today, you get a bunch of points, which is awesome. So 20 points today. And then again, there'll be a few other points. So you'll see those relevant hashtags, and that's it.
Okay, so we're going to do a little poll for you guys if you want to answer these questions that we're about to put up.
I always try to vote.
I know that it's like in red. You are not allowed.
Pick me.
Pick me.
You're in the back. I know.
I know. I just had to like stop myself from saying stuff out loud. All right, we're gonna give everyone just a few more seconds to poll. Still coming in. All right, the anticipation.
No, I'm nervous. I'm like, oh no.
No.
Is what I'm thinking right?
Okay, they're stopping now. And the results. Okay. Good, almost down the, like, yeah, so all cognacs are brandy, not all brandy is cognac, this is true. The main grape used in cognac production, very good. It is Uni Blanc. And of the 5 crus, the largest cru is Grand Champagne. Actually, it is not the largest cru of the 5 crus. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as far as like land mass goes. But it is a very important cru, but not the largest. Okay, cool. Now, we're about to, yep, this is loud. Sorry, I was supposed to pre-warn you guys that that was a little bit of a loud video. All right, so that was some cool drone footage of Cognac, and I don't know how many of you have ever been to Cognac. Ivy, Lynette, have you guys been to Cognac?
Once, Yeah.
Yeah, so you know, it's kind of like the stuff of naturalist paintings is what I tell people. It's like rolling hills, these like languid rivers, and then loads of vineyards all over the place.
Especially for Americans, where it's like, you know, a vineyard is older than, it's like 8 times as old as your hometown.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I know. When I think when you're traveling in Europe a lot of times, I think one of the funniest things I was like going through and someone was like, see that bar over there? And I was like, yeah, and they were like, that's older than your country. I was like, awesome. That really puts shit into puts things into perspective. Sorry. All right, so brandy can be made anywhere, but in order for brandy to be called cognac, it must come from the Cognac region of France. The delimited region of France is in the southwest of France. It's about a 2.5-hour train ride from Paris, and it's situated 75 miles north of Bordeaux. Its west side faces the Atlantic Ocean, and the Charente River crosses the region. And it, along with the region's proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, plays a major role in the development of the region. Next slide. It's the 4th largest French vineyard, the 2nd largest French wine producer, and the world's largest white wine vineyard area, producing an eau de vie. The cognac enterprise is of great importance to the livelihood of the people there. It's responsible for 17,000 direct employees. The cognac growing industry contributes roughly 10,000 people. Distillation and trade around 3,000, and annexed to professions another 4,000. So when we say annexed, we're thinking of the people who operate printing presses, the coopers, glass makers, down to the people producing farm equipment used for harvesting and pressing. This accounts for 50% of the active general agricultural population of France. And once you begin to factor in dependence of these employees, you could deduce that 60,000 people are living off the products, which is pretty impressive for a region of, like, the population is just under 1 million people. Next slide. So a spirit as complex as cognac has a rich and storied history. Physical evidence of wine production in this area dates all the way back to the 1st century. So we know that people have been making wine in this region since the Romans. In the 11th century, during the Middle Ages, we start to see international trade as a mentality emerge. The seafaring Dutch were really fond of the region's salt and wine, and because of the aforementioned location on the Atlantic and the navigability of the Charente River, they would come often for goods. And you start to see this relationship between the Dutch and the French form. Many centuries later, during the Renaissance, there was a lot more travel and exploration taking place, especially in Europe, along with development and modernization. The King of France at the time, King Henry IV, wanted to establish industrial and agricultural reform, so he invited Dutch engineers to help him with draining the marshlands. This elevated salt production and trade significantly, but it also brought a settlement of Dutch into the region. Remember, they loved the wine down here, so once they got there, they started shipping this wine back up to the Netherlands. Now, the long journeys proved pretty detrimental to the wine, so once it arrived to their homeland, they would do a single distillation of it and then dilute that with water and add herbs to it to try to revive it back to its original character. The Dutch soon decide that it's much more economical to distill the wine in France along the Charente River rather than ship the extra volume. So they start to install the first distilleries along the Charente, using copper from Amsterdam to build the stills. Now, over time, these rudimentary stills would be improved upon by the French, and at the beginning of the 17th century, we see double distillation make its first appearance. Excuse me. This, along with the discovery that by allowing the spirit to wait in these barrels as it was about to be loaded onto the ship, it transformed it into something else. The oak added this character to it that made it something that could be drunk neat. In 1643, we see our first cognac house, Auger. Really, though, it's at the end of the 17th century that, and more markedly at the beginning of the 18th century, that we start to really see the market take shape. All of these merchants from the British Isles are coming to Cognac, and they're setting up these houses that collect eau de vie and ship them to their contacts in England, Holland, and Northern Europe. And it's in the 18th century that we see houses like Martel, Remy Martin, Hein, Delaman, and Hennessy all formed. Note that these are merchants from the British Isles coming to France, setting up and shipping this eau de vie. So this is a very much a French product, but it has always started life as an export product. Come the 19th century, we see several more houses form, including Courvoisier, Camus, and Hardy, which we're going to taste both of those today. Very exciting. And there's a lot of growth and advancement. Brands begin to shift from cask to bottle, creating identity. And this also creates new industry and jobs in the region: glass making, cork making, printing, and things of that nature. However, it's during this century that we also see a lot of turmoil. The French Revolution causes great decline in cognac sales. There's a 9-year trade embargo that's placed with British trade that essentially collapses cognac sales during this time. But really, the most devastating blow by far during this century is phylloxera. The sap-sucking, French root-loving aphid rears its ugly head in the region around 1875. A mere 20 years later, in 1895, there's only 14% of the vineyards remaining. That's 86% of the vineyards that are just wiped out because of phylloxera. Now, phylloxera was a national issue for France, right? It was really a European issue. And after learning that the aphid did not attack American rootstock in the same way that it attacked French rootstock, some winemakers proposed grafting American rootstock onto French vines. And most vineyards throughout France adopted this solution to great success. However, the chalky soils of Cognac, especially in the Champagne region, were inhospitable to the American rootstock. They were unable to adequately absorb iron from the soil, which prevented the production of chlorophyll, causing a condition known as chlorosis. And this quandary prompted an expedition led by one Pierre Viala. He was a professor at the Montpellier School of Agriculture, to go to America to search out phylloxera-resistant vines that could also thrive in the limestone-laden soils. Now, this led him to Texas, of all places, where an American horticulturist named Thomas Volney-Munson was cultivating grapes in Denison, Texas, and he found that Vitis Belindieri was growing and doing really well in the limestone soils there. So they deduced that these vines might be the solution to cognac, and they were right. And for this work, Volney-Munson was awarded by the French government, but so was Denison, Texas. And to this day, Denison, Texas is the sister city to Cognac, France. So Texas saved cognac. Bless all my Texans in here. Where are you at? The 20th century brings us some organization in the region, an initiative to protect the product, and legislation is instituted. In 1909, the production zone is delimited. In 1936, the AOC is recognized as a controlled appellation of origin, and in 1938, regional appellations are delimited, and these are known as crus. Next slide, please. Now, the Cognac region has 6 crus, and though they became officially recognized in 1938, it was actually the work of one Henri Coquand, a respected paleontologist and geologist from the area. He teamed up in 1860 with a taster, and he took it upon himself to kind of go around the region, study the geology, and test these eau de vies, and he came up with a classification system for the area, and it was his work that led to this 1938 decree for these crus. And they are, so Grand Champagne is actually, it's kind of, these colors are, so when I say like the most dark orange red in the center, that would be Grand Champagne. And it's right at the center of the region, right at the heart. And when we say Champagne here, it's not to be confused with the wine growing region in northern France. It's called Champagne for the companion soils, very chalky soils here. The eau de vie that grow here are considered to have great subtlety and finesse, and are considered to be best for extended aging periods. So they really hit their apogee many decades in, up to 50 years. Now, right outside of that, the slightly lighter color of orange that kind of hugs around that, that is Petite Champagne. And the soils here are very similar to Grand Champagne. The eau de vies are considered also similar, but maybe with just slightly less finesse. Now that orange that's just at the top of those other two oranges, the lighter orange, that's Borderies. That's the smallest of all of the crus. This has its own kind of microclimates, and the eau de vie from here are said to have kind of lots of violet expressions, minerality. Outside of that, the dark green, that's Fenbois. Fenbois is a large area. There's lots of sites coming from here, and these eau de vies that come from here are considered to be like faster aging, really fruity, vibrant eau de vie. Then you have Bon Bois, and then you have Bois Ordinaire. And Bois Ordinaire is kind of cool because that's like right up on the coast, right? So the vines there are growing amongst all of these maritime plants, and you get kind of this beachy vibe. Now, the microclimates and the vineyard sites all vary within these crus, as do the soils, but mostly the soils are clay and limestone. And when you see a cru listed on a bottle, that means that all of the grapes come from that specific cru. However, if you see Fine Champagne, that's not a cru, but it is an AOC designation. And that means that the grapes come from both Petite and Grand Champagne, with at least 50% of the composition being Grand Champagne. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this is a strictly regulated and monitored product. It is protected by two labels, the GI on the European level and the AOC, or Controlled Appellation of Origin, on the French level. All right, next slide, please.
I'm gonna interject really quick and sprinkle some questions in here that have come that I actually don't know.
Okay.
So, and one of them has kind of been answered. I want to see if you can say anything as well. Are there any remaining pre-phylloxera vines that still produce grapes used in cognac?
I don't know. I've tasted pre-phylloxera spirit, but I don't know that there are still vines that existed pre-phylloxera producing there.
And then a question, Bois terroir, is that a general term for all, or is it an alternate name for a specific cru?
Oh, the Bois Ordinaire, Bois terroir, like, yeah, the Bois terroir, like good terroir, it would be like Bois Ordinaire or Bois terroir.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Great. And then someone wants to know, which cru is the largest?
Well, so landmass wise, as you can see, if you want to go back to that map, you know, honestly, like you're looking at Bois Ordinaire or even Fenbois are going to be two of the largest. Fenbois has a lot of vineyard sites on it. So I don't have the exact breakdown right now on how much each produces, but I can get that and send it out to, I believe that everyone's getting an email, so I can send that out. But Fenbois is going to be one of the largest as far as like how much it's actually producing and landmass. But then you can see that Bois Ordinaire is actually a very large area, but they're just not producing as much eau de vie there. There's more eau de vie being produced in the Fenbois area.
Great. Thank you. Moving on.
You're welcome. Amazing. Oh, and then Beth says that there are a few pre-phylloxera vines, but not many. Yeah, that is a rare find indeed, and a cool one at that. Cool. So cognac is a spirit that is distilled from wine, and to make wine, you got to have grapes. Now there are 6 grape varieties permitted in cognac production. However, the most important, the most significant, and the most widely planted is the Uni Blanc grape. It's also known as Trebbiano. It comprises of 98% of the vineyards in cognac, and it is the grape that reestablished cognac post-phylloxera. It's ideal for a few reasons. It has high yield, it matures late, but it also produces these fruity, low alcohol, high acid wines. And we want these characteristics. The high acid helps preserve the wine until it's ready to be distilled, and the low alcohol enables a greater concentration of these aromas to be present during distillation. Now, wines produced for cognac are typically between 7 and 11% ABV, and they're never exceeding 12% ABV. So this is not the wine that you're necessarily going to be chilling, drinking on the patio with your girlfriends, but it's great for distilling. So off to the stills we go. Next slide, please. All right, so column distillation is strictly prohibited in cognac production. Instead, all distillation is done using the Charentez method, which just means that it's twice distilled using copper pot stills over an open flame. Now, these stills have pretty much remained the same for centuries. The boiler, the still head, also known as the chapiteau, the swan's neck, also known as the cul de cyne, and the condenser coil must all be made from copper. This metal is selected for its heat conduction, malleability, and its reactivity with certain components such as sulfur in the wine. Next slide, please. All right, so we load our wine into a boiler. This initial load may not exceed 120 hectoliters. We turn on the heat. Our liquid begins to heat up, boil. Vapor will rise from the still head, pass through the swan's neck into the condensing coil, where it will condense back into a liquid. Now, the first time we do this, this first distillation is called la première chauffe. And the liquid that we produce here is called the bruit. And it's a cloudy liquid that's low in alcohol. It clocks in between 28 and 32% ABV. And this is the liquid that the Dutch would have been drinking centuries ago when they took it back home and they did that single distillation that they then diluted and added herbs to. It would have been the bruit. We're going to take that bruit and load it back into the still. This time, the load cannot exceed 25 hectoliters. And we fire back up the still and follow the vapor through the same path as before, only this time our distiller, and this heat is called le bon chauffe, the good heat. Only this time our distiller is going to make cuts or selections. In cognac production, they typically make 4 cuts. You have your têtes or your heads, your heart or your coeur, and that goes straight off to maturation. Then you have your seconds, which is the cut just before the tails, and then you have the tails or cues. Now, at this time, there are a lot of decisions made in the distilling process. The timing of cuts, where the seconds are recycled, if they're going to be recycled in the next batch of wine or the next batch of bruit, and the decision whether or not to include lees in the distillation will have a great effect on the style of the spirit. For instance, lees are dead yeast cells that are left over after fermentation. The gross lees or large lees are always removed, but a distiller can decide if they want to keep the fine lees in the distillation. In the heat of distillation, these will break apart and release fusel alcohols, fatty acids, and amino acids that will cause a number of additional reactions in the still, such as esterification and Maillard reactions. And the result will be a richer style of eau de vie with a great deal of character. These are typically considered to be a more age-worthy style of eau de vie. And if we exclude them, we'll get a lighter style. The maximum ABV for an eau de vie is 72.4%. And all in all, it takes about 9 hectoliters of wine to make 1 liter of spirit. Distillation in cognac is done seasonally, and it must be done by March 31st following a harvest. Next slide, please. Oh, this one has no sound. This is just like little snippets of being inside of a still room. All right. So the eau de vie destined to be cognac must be in barrel no later than April 30th by law. and it must spend at least 2 years in barrel to be labeled cognac. And I did say oak, right? Because it can't just be any barrel, it has to be oak barrel. French oak, next slide, please. French oak is the tradition here, and the 2 types traditionally used are fine grain, where the grain is much tighter and less tannic, or wide grain, which allows the spirit to interact more and extract more tannins from the oak. Some producers choose to work with only one type. Some producers use both. It's really up to them. Only the heart of each tree is used. It's cut into staves and sent to the tonnellerie or cooper, where it will be seasoned, shaped into a barrel, and toasted. Charring is not really a practice that we see in cognac, but we do see barrels toasted to varying degrees. Next slide. So once a spirit enters a barrel, it is not static. It is continuously moving in and out of the staves. And the first stage of aging is called extraction. It's during this stage that the spirit begins to develop its color and adopt the characteristics of the wood, the lignans, the wood tannins, the lactones. These compounds imbue the eau de vie with its embryomatic, woody, and vanilla notes. The development on this stage depends on a lot of the factors, such as the oak type chosen, the toasting levels, and the barrel age. Now, French barrels are so rich in extractables that they can be considered new for several uses. Those will diminish, but they're pretty strong for quite a few of those initial uses. Barrel rotation is a major component of cellar management. Parcels of barrels called coupes are formed based upon the character of eau de vie. The spirit will typically spend that initial aging period in new barrel for just a short period of time. It's usually less than a year. And then they are progressively transferred into older and eventually more neutral barrels, so that there is still oxidation and evaporation taking place, but less extraction of wood notes. We don't want to overpower all of those delicate fruit and floral aromas with oak. It's all about balance. The cellar conditions play a significant role in how a spirit ages. Dry cellars tend to produce these woodier, spicier eau de vie with a higher ABV because more water is evaporating. Whereas on the other hand, humid cellars, more alcohol is evaporating. More alcohol is evaporating, so you're getting these more mellow, round, and kind of tropical spirits. Again, this as the theme, some producers choose to use only one type of cellar, but many of them will use both types, kind of transferring their coupes from one to the next throughout the duration of their aging. Next slide, please. So along with extraction, we see oxidative aging occurring. Alcohol is diminishing through evaporation, along with some of the more volatile compounds that are left after distillation, and oxygen is moving in and reacting with components of the distillate, as well as components that have been extracted from the wood. So fatty acids and alcohols will continue to react with each other and create new esters. I mean, y'all, what happens in a barrel is like magic to me. There's just so many cool things that we don't fully understand taking place in this barrel, and all of these flavors that are being created in there through esterification and oxygen. It's just really neat to me. Sorry, I get chills. New molecules are formed from reactions between the eau de vie as well as the oak compounds, and this illustrates the marriage between wine spirit and oak. And this kind of thing, this can't be rushed and it can't be simulated, right? This can only really happen over time. You can't heat a barrel and make it happen the way that it does in cognac. Oak gives way to floral and vanilla notes, fruit flavors deepen and develop, and eventually we begin to see these flavors of Rancio Charentaise develop. And the chemistry of Rancio is not completely understood. The wood extract, oxygen, and thyme seem to be the key components here, though. When speaking about the flavors that you find from Rancio, you typically hear words like forest floor, wet leaves, tobacco, soy sauce, but you also hear things like passion fruit, honeysuckle, jasmine, lychee. It's just this myriad of flavors that come from this long period of aging in cognac, and it's really neat. Next slide, please. So at a certain point, these reactions hit their apogee, and the reactions kind of stop occurring. And then the spirit is transferred into a glass bottle called a demi-jaune and stored in a paradis. The paradis is the section of the cellar where the oldest spirits are stored. Now, cellar management and blending are extremely important in cognac. Some people would argue that it's in these stages that cognac truly becomes cognac. So as you can imagine, the cellar master plays a significant and central role, if not the most central role, in the production of cognac. They, working with their team, will have, they will be involved with the selection of sites where the grapes are grown. They would have a very detailed contract regarding the distillation of the spirit, and they would oversee the eau de vie throughout the entire aging process, monitoring and managing the coupes, determining which will be destined for younger marts and which would be suitable for extended aging. Depending on each spirit's elaboration, it'll have its own aromatic profile, which will be blended with other spirits with their own characteristics. And it's kind of this layering process and this combination. It's this process that's not taught in school. Like, you don't go to uni for it. It's passed on from generation to generation, and it depends on empirical knowledge gained over a course of time. The sense memory that these people have is nuts, y'all. And they are creating these really subtle blends with sometimes, there's different ages and different crews. There can be dozens of eau de vie in one bottle. And they're constantly looking for this, this harmony and this consistency and this distinctive personality and style for whatever house that they're blending for. It is often compared to a perfume in the way that there is a symphony of notes. And I think that it's one of the best analogies you can come up with when you speak about cognac and what's happening in there. I always tell people it's like a journey, because you're just kind of journeying through all of these different aromatics when you're sipping on something like this. Okay, next slide, please.
Il faut imaginer ces eaux de vie à travers un long vieillissement, ce qu'elles sont aujourd'hui et ce qu'elles éventuellement elles peuvent devenir. Donc il faut une vraie humilité face à ce travail discret de ces eaux de vie. Parce qu'on n'est jamais sûr du résultat.
Awesome. Great. So let's talk about drinking cognac. Next slide, please. So there's an app called Cognac Pairing that you guys can put onto your phone and use to look up all kinds of neat ways to pair cognac. Lynette, what's your favorite food pairing with cognac?
I'm a sucker for cheese. I mean, I think like after especially tasting the full range at our media tasting, I've really enjoyed finding the right kind of cheese, like if ones have fruitier notes, or if I'm getting something that has maybe a little more of the red end shows, going with something a little more grassy. Because I think, again, in that same way, the French are really great at making cheese, so I guess I should French cheese and cognac.
What grows together goes together, right?
Exactly.
Ivy, what's yours?
I mean, I never even thought about, and I regret to say, drinking cognac with seafood. But since also the media training, I remember looking at it and being like, well, that is a really good idea. And I happened to go to Maine, where everyone eats lobster like it's their job. So I was drinking I actually went VSOP and lobster, and it was just about the most fantastic thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, 10 out of 10, highly recommend lobster VSOP.
Baller. Well,
yeah,
I mean, one of my favorite things is to keep a VS frozen in my freezer and mix like caviar and creme fraiche and eat it with potato chips and drink VS, frozen VS. So if you've never done that, I highly recommend it. But yeah, I mean, I think that like when you look at this, and the cool thing is that, cognac is, it starts life as a white wine. And and we know that wine and food are great together. And so, kind of thinking about all of these ways that you can pair cognac with food, but I also like to look at these sorts of things when I'm developing cocktails, and I think, oh, well, okay, they can be compatible with this sort of food, and start to build flavors based around things that I see compatibility with, although I won't be making any lobster cocktails anytime soon. Next slide, please. Awesome. And then we have the aroma wheel, and this kind of just drives home once again the fact that cognac is like a palette. There's so much. I don't know of another spirit that has this breadth of like aromas and flavors, as far as what you're getting from raw material, then from fermentation, from distillation, and then the aging process, where you're just getting all of these like floral and fruit components mixed with these oak components. And then once you add time into the equation and what happens through the development, there really is just so much that you can do, making it such a fun spirit to mix with and to think outside of the box, and not just think of it as that thing that you sip at the end of dinner, or that thing that has to be in like a dark, bitter cocktail, even though those are great. And if that's your bag, that's amazing. But it's just kind of thinking about how it is something that can be consumed year round and mixed into long, fun, fruity drinks. Tropical drinks and cognac are like amazing together because there's so much spice there, baking spice and things of that nature, So this is a really fun wheel to kind of also get you thinking about all of the different flavor components you can find there. And then if the flavors exist there, then you know that you can probably find them to be compatible ingredients in any kind of cocktail that you're mixing.
So speaking of cocktails and other things, before we go into tasting, do you have any books, or besides the app that can kind of help you with pairings, do you have any books that have helped you, or any blogs or something that people can go to?
I mean, I use the Cocktail Bible a lot when I'm thinking about like flavor combinations. I cook a lot, and so I think that because I'm in my pantry a lot, just messing with all sorts of different spices and stuff, I'll be like, I wonder if this will be good in a drink also, and just kind of throw it out there. So, I don't know about anything specifically cognac driven as far as cocktails go. Although I hear that you just came out with a new book, and it has some cognac cocktails in there. Shameless plugging.
What about, do you have any cognac books that you recommend? Like a more deep dive into cognac?
So I do have a book, and it's called Cognac, and it's giant, and forgive me, it's upstairs in my other bookshelf because I can't think of the name of the author right now. And it's like a very dense book about the Cognac region. And then there was a book written by a gentleman in San Francisco, I think, called From Smoke. I also have that, and he takes you, it's the gentleman who has Bar Agricole.
Thad Vogler.
Yeah, and he talks a lot about it's a lot about Calvados and Armagnac, but he touches on the Cognac region also. And Charles Neal's websites are actually a wealth of information about French spirits, and that's who he's kind of traveling around with. And Charles Neal has written quite a few books about French spirits, but if you go to his websites and read about French spirits on his websites as well, they're great. But the website that the BNIC has put together is really just a wonderful wealth of information for people to go to and visit.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. All right, shall we taste?
Let's.
So I prefer, oh wait, we have to watch this first. We're gonna watch a video before we taste.
In order to experience Cognac's full range of aromas, we recommend to use a tulip glass, or if not, a wine glass.
The funnel shape of the tulip glass opens outwards to gradually evade the aromas of the cognac without letting the alcohol overpower the overall impression. Fill your glass with several centiliters of cognac. There's no need to overfill your glass to awaken your senses.
Okay, great. Awesome. So I was hoping that this part could be a little more group oriented. And I would love for people who have the bottles with them to maybe in the chat, talk about things that you're tasting and smelling. And then Ivy and Lynette, if we could do this part together, because everyone just listened to me talk for a really long time. And so, oh, cool. Amanda's putting up some things too. So the first one we're going to taste is the Bosch Gabrielson. This is so Tres Corps, but so 3 crosses. But this is actually a VS level, and they get their eau de vie from crews all over, but they have a lot of their eau de vie coming from Fan Bois, and I think that this really kind of expresses that. So I'm gonna pour a good ounce. Do y'all have your bottles? Do you have bottles with you?
No.
Oh no, Lynette, do you have them? Okay, good. Okay, cool.
That's hers.
Ivy.
I'm having
Package issues.
package issues, and I actually
Oh, I'm sorry.
and it's there. It's at Landa, but I am at home. So
Okay, well,
I'm gonna taste retroactively and then put it on my store.
Amazing. Amazing. Cool. So just, you know, I happen to have the tulip glass here, but it will taste delicious in whatever glass that you have at your house. And then I'm sure all of you are pro tasters, but typically when we're going in, we don't really swirl with these spirits. We want to just kind of hold it down just below the nose and breathe it in. So don't bury your nose in there and kill all of your smelling organs. And yeah, for me, this is like just such a vibrant expression of VS. Like it just jumps right out of the glass with lots of like bright fruit notes, and then these kind of lily and daisy notes, these fresh white flowers, and a little like vanilla and toasted almond. What do you have over there, Lynette?
Yeah, I was getting I think this time I'm tasting it, I'm getting more of that like apricot fruity notes. Last time I went more in for like honeysuckle and those kind of things.
Yeah.
And something a little more green, which I found in this as well. There's like a herbaceousness, which I think comes from like that greenness you get from like lilacs. You know, that has that like, it's a floral, but yet it's a greenish floral.
Yeah, I think that's where I got, because I've had some lilies in my house all summer, and they have this like spicy green. It's like a mix of fresh white flowers and then this like spicy green thing that happens. And I kind of, when I first smelled this, I was like, oh, it's like the lilies. I had to look around and make sure I didn't have any lilies around, just or like interfering. And I get a lot of like kind of pear and apple here too. Cool, let's taste. So, and I think that, again, it's like, for me, and such a nice mark of a spirit is when what you smell comes right over onto the palate for you. And I think that's really true here. But in addition, you get this really nice kind of like honeyed toast character, and a little bit of this like nice creme brulee like roundness. But then in addition, there's just this great like bright fruitiness, really vibrant fruity character, a little bit of baking spice. And yeah, Lynette, what about you?
Yeah, I'm getting, it's just like, it's really, I get that nice, the vegetal part of it is kind of clinging in there. I get that like spice notes, but there's like a bit of almost like mentholy, very like cooling flavors also coming through for me.
Yeah. I saw somebody just throw up yellow raisins and caramel, and I can totally like the golden raisin vibe is real. It is strong within the spirit. All right. So we're gonna do another VS. Now this one's coming from Camus.
Yum.
So this is part of a line produced on the Isle de Ré, which is when I was showing you guys that coastal area, Ile de Ré. God, Isle de Ré, Kellie, jeez. Ile de Ré. How embarrassing. Ile de Ré, and that this is going to be kind of coming from that more coastal area. Again, a VS, so we're looking at the youngest spirit in the bottle will be 2 years old. Wow, and this is like just like, there's some kind of like some dried kind of like rose petal here, and like, but just hazelnut and kind of like a baked peach situation. Lynette, what about you, dear?
Yeah, I'm kind of in there. It's like it kind of hit me, like I was trying to think of which nut, but you kind of nailed it. But it was like the hazelnut, because it is just a little bit more, a little less floral and more leaning into those kind of aromas. Cherry.
Oh, you pronounce this Camus. I was when I was much younger, I think I was a freshman in college, and I was reading the author Camus. I was reading The Stranger, and I was talking to this guy about it, and I kept calling it Camus, and he just he gave me the most, so it will forever be ingrained in my brain, Camus, because he gave me the most like snotty, like, that's, you're not pronouncing that correctly.
Especially like out of all the things, out of all the books to mispronounce, like, oh no, no, no.
And you're just like, okay, cool. Hey, at least I was reading. Yeah, and I think it's important to note that, like, we're tasting 5 spirits here today, and there's just no way, like, these are just 5 expressions, but as we can even taste between these 2 VS expressions, they're so different from each other. There's over 300 producers in Cognac, so this is just a small taste and kind of window into like what is happening in this region and what kind of spirits are being produced there. So this by no means represents the entire region of Cognac, but it is a nice little preview into it. All right.
A lot of people saying that this one was more tropical, banana, pineapple, as where the other one was more floral, grassy, green. I know I feel bad for all of you out there who don't have your samples, including Ivy. We'll kind of quickly go through a few more tastings. Yeah. On the next one, but then if you have any questions about them, do let us know.
Yes, and I totally get that banana, going back into that. Okay, so the next one is the Node, and this is a VSOP. So VSOP, the youngest spirit in this eau de vie is 4 years old. And you can see, can you see, like, very much a color variation here. And this is when, right about now, I'm getting like these great little like orange marmalade, candied orange, kind of some curry spices. Like, it starts to get spicier at this point for me. Like, there's ginger and clove and cinnamon once we start moving into these slightly older expressions. Still fruit, obviously, but just a little like more of a dried fruit character.
Probably because of a little bit more tannic, right?
Yeah, and so, right, and there's just gonna be, it's just in general a little bit more, it's had more age on it. So when I say the youngest age in all of these bottles, there's often spirits that are older than 4 years in here. And so you're going to get these kind of more developed fruit notes at this point, and where we're going from golden raisins to more like dried figs, and where we might start off with like orange zest, and now we're going to move into more like candied orange. Somebody just said dried fruit cake, and I totally agree. Oh, hi, Rosie. It's definitely moving into those kinds of like dried fruits and spices, like dried ginger and things of that nature. Lynette?
Yeah, it's something like there's like I always kind of get this when it's getting a little bit to this point, like there's like a breadiness, you know, or something like more toffee,
oh yeah,
you know, aromas that come out. I think someone in here was saying dried fruit cake and gingerbread, because that spice brings all that in.
Yeah,
I get that underlying.
That's a spicy spirit, actually. As I taste it, there's a lot of like spice there. That's great. Awesome.
And I've got one question before we go on. What's the difference between Imperial, Deluxe, and Selection? We have a question in the chat here.
Oh,
how are they recognized by the DNIC?
guys might have stumped me on that one. I don't know that that's like an official labeling necessarily for a spirit as much as it might be the brands using that language. That's like more brand, that's not like a official recognition within the BNIC. That's more of like the brands labeling that and creating their own identity within their own expressions, right? So they might, like, they'll have something that's like, this is the elegance line and this is the deluxe line. And so that's more, it's not really about like anything that the BNIC recognizes, that's brand identity.
Right.
Cool, so we're gonna go into the Pasquet. So this is my first time having this one. And this is organic, and that number 7 is essentially the age. So this is, would be still considered a VSOP, but this is at least 7 years old.
My bottle's not opening.
Uh-oh.
Rip it off.
Just, you know, do that little curb thing where you knock off the top of it.
In a bar.
Totally safe, totally safe.
For my wine key, I can figure this out.
Oh, wow, and this is, this kind of goes back, this has like a gardenia white, like florality, just kind of spring flowers jumping out of the glass, and like almond skin, apricots and golden raisins. This is a pretty bright, vibrant spirit. Do you have it yet?
The fact that you're having this the first time, are there a lot of organic cognacs, or do we get very few here? I'm curious.
I mean, in general, the region is constantly moving towards a lot of sustainability practices. You know, to be certified organic takes a like, you have to be it takes like a government's certification. So a lot of times what you see is that people actually use these practices without it being that they have a stamp on their bottles saying it. It's kind of like in the world of biodynamic and things of that nature in wine, right? Like, where a lot of times people might be practicing these sorts of things, but they're not necessarily being stamped with that on their bottle. Oh, wow. That one's, well, it's very dry, it's very bright, and it's just got this kind of like, who out there is tasting this one right now? It has this like lift, this fruit lift kind of mid palate. And those flowers come through really vibrantly. Like, so all of those white spring flowers kind of explode over the palate, and you get these great kind of bright, vibrant stone fruit character. And then just like this nice kind of almond skin grip that's quite lovely. And then just still a little bit of that nice like toast and creme brulee, but it's not really like overly burnt sugar, but just kind of toasted sugar. And I think that this one actually, to me, does have that herbaceousness that we were talking about a few spirits back, Lynette, where there's just these kind of like green notes. Were you able to get your bottle open?
Finally, yes. It's delicious.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, again, this is the case of, this is like a family run company where they've been, the son has been apprenticing under his father since childhood. You just see so much of that kind of stuff in cognac, which just makes it so special, right? It's just like one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. And you're talking about a lot of times where it'll be like 6 generations in, where these people have just passed down these traditions. And again, you know, Ivy, it goes back to like, it's stuff that like, sometimes it's hard as Americans to even connect to, because we're like, we don't, you know, have that kind of generational, and some of us do, but it's not inherent in our country. And when you go to these places and you realize that these people have been passing this knowledge down, and then that's how they've learned about it, it's just really cool.
Totally.
All right, so we're on our final one, and this is the Hardy XO. So now XO means that the spirits here are at least 10 years old. And yeah, and this is where you really start to see this expression of rancio come up, right? So like I put my nose in here and I'm immediately kind of hit with like sandalwood and scarbox and cedar, and then these like nice like coffee and I'm pretty sure Napoleon, I just saw someone question this, but I'm pretty sure Napoleon would be under 6 years, would be 6 years old, but that's not a, so it goes VS, VSOP, and XO, but but Napoleon would be in the 6-year-old range. Yeah, so sorry, Lynette.
I love this one. I think everyone's talking about how nice it was meeting Madame Hardy. And if you did get a chance to see last week, she did a awesome chat with Lauren Taylor. And there's just so much enthusiasm and vibrancy with this. You know, this is my first time having the XO, and we had the VSOP in our last tasting. And what I found is that her range has just a very different, there's something a little warmer for me about what the style that she makes them in. So they're a little, I kind of get this nice richness, and so there's definitely an identity between her range that has like a specific style. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's definitely like mouth filling and round. And then I think that there's a lot of like, it's like, it's spice, but to me, it's like this, like, oh, it's like this incensed wood character where it's like cedar and sandalwood. And it's like, it's kind of this like, yeah, this intoxicating incense of aroma. Palo Santo, yeah. Exactly, that kind of vibe. And then, but there's also, what I love about this is like kind of mid-palate, you get this lift, and it's this like tropical fruit lift, and it's lychee and like caramelized pineapple. Yeah, it's quite delicious. It's very nice. Awesome. Okay. For those of you who didn't have this with us, we're sorry, but thank you for sticking around, because now we're going to do another poll. And then we're going to do cocktails.
I know we had a lot of good questions too, so thank you everyone for your great questionings.
Your questioning.
Your questioning. JLP.
And then as people answer, I've got 5 more minutes, and then I actually have a thing.
I'm not surprised.
I thought I have to go. I did chow early, but luckily Lynette's making the cocktail. Last time I did. So.
If the BNIC folks have an answer, but the JLP bottle just doesn't say VS, VSOP, or XO on it.
No, they don't do that. They just list that number, and that number is the year. But because it's 7 years old, so it's actually a VSOP.
So their 10-year-old is then their XO.
I'm sorry. Yeah, if it said 10 on it, it would be their XO. That's correct. Yeah. Oh, is it neat sidecar? Nobody wants to drink it with apple juice and on a plane. Well, don't knock it till you've tried it, y'all.
Well, not now.
When you can get on a plane again. It's also a delicious brunch drink, which is what I've pivoted to since this has all been going down. Okay, cool. So I think I'm going to make you guys a cocktail now, which is I'm not set up at a bar like Lynette is. So I'm going to try, I'm just going to maybe hold some things up and try to see, because you lose me one way or the other. Oh, the joys of doing this during pandemic. Okay, maybe I'll sit down and hold ingredients up and kind of show you as I go along. So this is a cocktail called the Garden Hour. This is something that we've done at the bar before. And I call it kind of a template, if you will. So because honestly, we've done this with strawberry infused vermouth, peach infused vermouth, and cantaloupe infused vermouth, and they've all worked with the spirit. So we are going to just start with everybody's favorite measurement of something, a bar spoon of elderflower liqueur. all of my bar people cringe. Does it have to be a bar spoon? And then it's just a few drops of celery bitters. Have to be really careful because those will definitely overtake. And then I've taken actually a Blanc Vermouth from the Cognac region, and I infused it with peaches. And I'm gonna do 1.5 ounces of that.
Speaking my language.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I think, and then I'm using 1.5 ounces of a VSOP cognac. So I love making stirred drinks that are brighter for the summer. Not every summer drink has to have a ton of citrus in it, and that's something that we like to kind of focus on a lot of times. So it's a simple 4-ingredient drink, 5 if you want to include the fact that there are peaches in there. And we're just going to stir it up. And my recipe says to use a Nick and Nora glass, but I, alas, don't have one at my house. So we're going to go into a coupe. I had this moment earlier, Lynette, where I was like, should I like freeze my glass and freeze my mixing glass? Like, that's what we would do. Just calm down.
The bar, I have like my glass that's already chilled.
I know, you're killing it.
It's easier to
So, you know, full disclosure, another thing that we would typically do at the bar is that we would probably have some kind of edible flower clipped to the side of this. Just to bring home some more aromatics. It's kind of getting past edible flower season around here though, because it's hot in Georgia. And then I'm gonna go, so it's this lovely like kind of amber color. And then I'm gonna take a channel knife and a lemon, but I'm not gonna go directly over the glass because I don't want to put all of those oils directly over the top. It'll be a little harsh. So I just go kind of up the sides when I'm expressing it, just to give it a hint of those lemon oils, but not messing with the aromatics of the cocktail. And then it's just straight over the side. And it's super simple, but you like it. Cheers.
Cheers. So my inspiration came a little bit from a lot of the flavors and pairings and things that I found in our media tasting that were surprising. So hearing different things like lychee and things in the eau de vie and those aromas brought me down this path, because obviously at Lama San we do a lot of things with different Japanese ingredients. So I kind of went down that path and thought about, you know, different ingredients. And at the farm, which I will be at on Friday, they actually are growing fresh lemongrass and Thai basil. And I was like, well, these two things go together. And like summer for me, all I want is cognac and a julep style cocktail. I think it's a great vessel for it. So for those of you who like it neat, obviously that way. So I picked some beautiful fresh Thai basil. The way I like to do this, I'm just doing simply like taking off the leaves. And I just like to get them kind of like rubbed into the glass for myself and get all those oils. Because I don't want to leave it in there, but I do want all that aroma of the Thai basil before I add. I wish you could smell it. It's so good. And so like so much anise and flavor coming out of this, like grown right at the farm, so it's organic. I love it. And then I made the lemongrass syrup, and I'm just going to use 1/4 ounce in there. And I chose to use the Bêche for the cognac, so 2 ounces of that. Because of those kind of floral notes and aromas, everything we talked about, lilies, you know, I was like in that green note, and I was like, that just like plays right into everything going on in this cocktail. So I was like, all right, well, all these flavors are gonna go together, and I'm gonna wanna have it with like a delicious bowl of noodles or something. But I just wanted to kind of capture those flavors. So just really simple, I'm gonna put that together. I crushed up my ice already. Give that a nice little sizzle. Also bartending and blood. Just give it a little mix. And in here, just get a little water in there, and then top it off with more of our crushed ice. And then garnishing it with, I found the beautiful flowering Thai basil. So then we
Yes.
garnish it with those beautiful flowers and some of the herbs. So I get all of this aroma going on in the glass, and you get this really kind of pretty little julep style.
That's so pretty.
And so simple. So what I wanted with this drink was use a few ingredients just to emphasize the flavors of the batch, but I still get all that cognac there, all that flavor and aroma. It's just like some of the more of those tropical fruit notes are coming out now with the lemongrass and the Thai basil.
Yeah, and then just adding that ice and lengthening it like that. Oh, that sounds awesome. So are there any more questions before we wrap this up today? I don't think
Yep, Friday, the Instagram is starting at 11 a.m. I will be coming to the Fishkill Farm. For those of you in New York City, it's about an hour and a half north. It's really cool. We'll talk all about what they do there, why it inspired me to go and enjoy cognac with the farmers, and I'll be making a cocktail very similar to what Kellie enjoys. I'll be using some of their cider that they do, so it'll be a more fancy cognac and apple juice, but it will use apples and it's really cool when you just get to see farming techniques and connect that back to what's happening in cognac with grapes, etc.
Awesome. Well, guys, please get your cocktail submissions over to the competition. I'm so excited to see what everyone comes up with after this. And
I don't think we have a code. I don't think we have a code for today. Your emails and all of you should be tracked by your signing up, but we will just make sure. So if there's any questions, if there's anything else, we can post it onto SpeedRack. But I believe because we have your emails and all of you have logged in, just logging in gave you your points. So we'll have that tracked.
Confirmed, everyone's emails are there. Guys, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, Lynette and Ivy and Cognac USA for having me come and speak with you guys about cognac. And again, thank you all for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. I love you, Lynette.
All right, bye everyone. Can't wait to taste.
Yeah, can't wait to see what you guys all come up with. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.